After nearly 2 weeks straight of strikes against Iran, the U.S. hasn't struck Iranian targets in 3 days. What has that done to the price of energy? Well, AAA shows that the regular cost for a regular gallon of gas is $4.11, and that's actually unchanged from Sunday, but it's up 4 cents from last week. Last month, it was at $3.87, and last year at this time, it was at $3.14. We'll talk a lot more about the economic impacts from energy prices when we share a conversation we had with PhD economist Orphe Divounguy later in the show. But energy is just one element in this ongoing developing story. There's the taxpayer cost of the war, worth tens of billions of dollars, and the lives of U.S. military personnel at stake. There's also the stability in the overall Middle East region, all at stake. Now, previous strikes against Iran, they were aimed at targeting military strike sites that were being used to attack commercial cargo vessels passing through the very important Strait of Hormuz. The Center Square, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief Sarah Roderick Fitch reports a full naval blockade is in effect and has been so for the last couple of weeks, something meant to squeeze Iran and the IRGC economically, costing the Iranian regime up to $500,000 a day. Now, Iran is already experiencing record high inflation, and now it is worse as Iran and the RIGC are reportedly having trouble paying their bills. Now, President Donald Trump has said that the U.S. will strike Pickaxe Mountain. It's a highly fortified nuclear facility, which was struck in June 2025 when the U.S. targeted Iran's nuclear facilities. The administration is saying that the pause in strikes is to allow diplomacy to work. Now, the president maintains talks remain ongoing with Iran even as the strikes were ongoing. The president says the U.S. is locked and loaded as more assets move closer to the region if the U.S. opts on a full-scale strike targeting Iran's infrastructure and energy sites. Now, joining us to discuss this more in detail in the latest in Iran is Marty Yousefiani. He's director of the Iran Freedom Project. Marty, it's a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for taking time here with the States. What's the latest you're hearing from over the weekend from Iran?
Thank you for having me. Yes, as we've been observing, it appears that the United States' approach has been a strategic pause for the past few nights, and I think that is designed, first of all, to signal and to reposition some of the diplomatic posturing and back and forth that is taking place in Europe and Oman and elsewhere. And secondly, positioning some of the assets required for what the president has promised to possibly be Epic Fury 2. So it's a standby pause with the world holding its breath to see what might come next.
What are you hearing about the possibility of the IRGC looking to import militants from Afghanistan and even Iraq to join this fight?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, in terms of the perspective of the Iranian people, this is not new. Only the West is, for the first time, paying attention to it. The Iranian regime has done this in the past, importing, fighters, mercenaries, if you will, from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from Syria, and previously even from Hezbollah of Lebanon. So that has been something that they have employed simply because it's part of their calculus, worrying about the domestic inability of really retaining those suppressive forces that at some point they fear will be reluctant to shoot upon their brothers and sisters in the neighborhoods that they live. So this has been done before, and regretfully, it is not a surprise to the Iranian people.
Now, obviously, the conflict between the U.S. and Iran, Israel is a part of this conversation, Lebanon as well. But what about Russia and China? What role are they playing in this, and what concerns do you have?
Yeah, well, the Russian and Chinese and even the North Korean contingents have been elements that the Iranian people have been watching very, very carefully. Of course, they're all very cautious and careful not to cross certain lines. And so far, I think what is being done, in as much as they can get away with, is sharing intelligence and in some cases, some hard assets in terms of satellite and perhaps even some suppressive tools that the regime has been using, like artificial intelligence assessment and reading of the protesters and so forth. But yes, both Russia and China have been hands on supporting in terms of their desire to see the Tehran regime upstand, but at the same time they recognize that they cannot really engage in a forceful way because of the various strategic needs that they have in terms of their relations with Washington.
We've heard the president and other Trump administration officials talk about the multiple layers of leadership that they've obliterated, according to the president. But what are you hearing about those other members within the IRGC? Are there any defections that are notable?
Well, of course, under these conditions, there's enormous pressure, political pressure, economic pressure that the regime collectively is withstanding. We are seeing the formation of, at least it's much more nuanced and detailed than that, but for simple terms and for the audience to understand, there is in fact formation of two camps inside Iran: those who favor a more militant approach, a messianic, if you will, approach of taking it to the end. What may come does not matter to them. And then you have the other camp, which are really motivated for self-preservation in terms of their own heads, as well as vast financial empires that they control, meaning that camp would favor some form of a diplomatic solution so that they can sustain the regime in itself. So those two camps, while forming, are putting a lot of pressure domestically within the military as well as political infrastructure in Iran. It's a matter of time where they may be pushed to actually take positions on that, but it is real. It is something that the Washington and European political sort of negotiators must keep an eye on and try to see where they can to at least encourage this rift. But it is definitely a serious formation of a fissure. Something needs to be really carefully looked at.
As that's continuing to be part of the equation here about possible defections within the IRGC, what about the citizenry in Iran? Is there a movement to I don't know, bring about more freedom in that country, to push back against some of the hardliners within the government?
There's no question the Iranian people have courageously, the 92 million Iranians have courageously for the past 47 years, progressively at each turn, have demonstrated to the regime itself and to the world through the various protests and waves of acts of defiance that we have seen, the latest being this past January and February, where we saw hundreds of thousands, millions come into the streets to tell the regime as well as to the world that they reject the Islamist regime of Iran. So there's no question there. The Iranian people overwhelmingly, I think at 85, 90%, I think according to the regime's own internal surveys, defy and reject the form of Islamist governance that has really not paid off at all. The Iranian people are suffering financially, socially, politically. Every measurable data point that you look at, the Iranian people are suffering today. So there's no question there. It's just a matter of if and when they can overcome the suppressive capacity of the regime. We saw that the regime will respond to defiance and protest through bullets and mass arrests. That is what is holding the Iranian people back. If that was not there, the regime would not be standing today.
One of the major goals of the Trump administration, as he said over and over again, is Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Where is that in this overall conversation? What's the status there?
Well, the nuclear capacity and desire and ambitions of the regime have been at the forefront of every single U.S. administration and European policymakers. That stands. I think the regime has demonstrated that it cannot be trusted with such a capability. And what the 12-day Israeli strike, as well as the Epic Fury 1, accomplished, at least for now, was, as according to the president, the nuclear dust at least has been shut down beneath the rubble. The point is the Iranian regime's capacity to access that and to rebuild. For now, that is under control, but that is something that will not be allowed, cannot be allowed, I think, universally and regionally, as well as the Iranian people recognize that is a capability the regime cannot be trusted with. And so I don't think that there's any flexibility there.
And Marty, finally here, as we see this continue on now, several months into it, it's a lot of people waiting to see what happens in the days ahead. But who do you think should be calling the shots in Iran? Who in the country can rise up to work with the Trump administration on any kind of cooperation to get out of this?
Well, the simple answer to that is the Iranian people. The simple answer to that is that the Iranian people are the most important ally the world, the West, United States has, the region has. They are the most pro-Western, among the best educated, have high affinity for Western values. They basically want nothing different than our boys and girls here in the West desire a better life. So when you have a population that desires that, which falls directly in contrast to the regime, which has been pursuing militancy and isolation, our biggest asset is the Iranian people. Who, where, why, and how that can come into the fold is what we're looking at right now. And the biggest recommendation, the most important recommendation would be to invest in the Iranian people. The civil society that exists there has a long tradition, which the West has not really been paying attention to. Civil society in Iran has a tradition of 50, 60 years that is there, ready, able, and willing. It just needs nurturing, attention, patronage. And I think as a result of that, we will see elements and strong political spheres of influence that can and will take charge, hopefully the day after this regime falls.
Marty Yousefiani, director of the Iran Freedom Project, greatly appreciate you taking the time here for the States. We'll keep